In. All righty. This is Nifty Culture. I'm Pio, and this morning I have the pleasure of speaking with a very experienced podcaster and NFT OG, Adam McBride of the Adam McBride podcast. How's it going, Adam?
It's going great, brother. Great to be here, man.
Absolutely great to have you. Really excited to talk NFTs, talk about the history of NFTs. So, can you tell me a little bit about your early involvement in NFTs in general? We're going to talk about Curio Cards after,
Sure.
but yeah, can you talk about like your origins in the NFT space?
Yeah, everybody's got to know. They always ask in crypto, when'd you get into crypto, right? I got into crypto at Bitcoin at $32, right?
Wow.
And like an idiot, like everybody, almost nobody escapes this, which is you get into it and then you get out of it, right? Because the rise, everybody gets out of it. The only people who don't are the super wealthy, right? The Winklevoss twins didn't need to get out of it because they had a whole bunch of other money that they could hold, right? But so I got into it then. I then got into it again in the ICO craze 2016, 2017. I tried to do a business actually making coins. I learned how to make coins, programming and stuff. I learned that, tried to start a business around that, and it did not work. And then got reinvigorated again with the NFT craze. Basically, December this past year, I saw it popping on Twitter. I was like, oh, immediately I was like, this makes complete sense to me. From just a baseball card kind of guy, this is just like, this makes complete sense. And I got it as far as a much bigger vision as to not just collectibles and art, but an overlay on every aspect of our society, from AR, VR experiences to literally your home, being able to take your home and make pieces of it to sell out. I see NFTs as an overlay on our entire society, and art is kind of the first step. And so I got heavily back into it then, and was lucky enough to be a part of kind of these rediscovery projects, Mooncats, Curio Cards, and have made great friends and relationships with people who were involved in those projects. And it's just been a fantastic, fantastic ride.
Great to hear, man. And that's interesting that you were that early on Bitcoin and crypto. And yeah, it's so hard to like have that kind of foresight and realize that this thing isn't just like a pump and dump. So I feel for you
I
there.
tell people, look, diamond hands are easy on the way down. They're almost impossible on the way up. Like diamond hands, like I got diamond hands to zero. I'll ride that diamond hand forever on the way down, but on the way up, I'm out. Right? I don't have the power to do that. Very very few, almost none. Like it's a handful of people who can do that. You either have to be insane or wealthy, one of the two. I
I
think.
feel you, man. And so did you find NFTs like in 17, 18?
No, no, totally missed him. Totally missed him back then. Uh, Missed Rare Pepes, missed the whole thing. The Spells of Genesis cards, missed those. You know, those blockchain based NFTs. Missed all that. Didn't catch it until this run around. I knew about CryptoPunks when they launched. It did not interest me at the time. I remember listening to podcasts about it. It didn't interest me enough to take the step of finding out how to get ETH and how to actually take part in that. I remember crypto or the kitties, when they launched. I remember all that. I remember hearing about it and talking about it, but I wasn't it didn't motivate me enough to get involved, which involved to me is actually going out and making a purchase, making a trade. It didn't involve me enough, or it didn't get me excited enough back then. But certainly in December this year, I got fired up.
And so, what can you tell the audience about Curio Cards? So, just to give
Sure.
a little bit of context, Curio Cards kind of came back into the picture really in the past few weeks. Gary Vee tweeted about two projects that he liked. One of them was Curio Cards. He then also bought a bunch of them. He
Yep.
followed up with follow up tweets, kind of pumping up Curio Cards. The idea is that these are so old that they predate CryptoPunks. So, yeah,
That's
what other kind of context and history can you give us on Curio Cards?
Sure. So Curio were done they released their first cards in May of 2017. And basically it was done as a startup. These guys were literally, there was a group of them, 4 or 5 guys who got together in San Francisco and were like, they were part of Bitcoin meetups and they knew about Ethereum, and they were like, let's do a startup where we can take artists and put artists basically on the blockchain. And it's really it was a revolutionary idea. We now are like, oh, this just makes sense. But trust me, in 2017, it made sense to a small handful of people. And these guys basically got together and tried to do a startup around this idea. They got the artists, they created the websites, they created the smart contracts with it, which at that time was very difficult to do. So they had a team of developers who were literally like writing how to do smart contracts in 2017. And they released their first set of 3 cards on like I think May 9th, 2017, which is about a month before CryptoPunks, and they got no traction, zero. And so the full release of the cards, there are 30 cards, got released over the next 6 months or whatever, and they were literally out hawking these cards, trying to get people investing and buying the cards, and they were 50 cents, 25 cents in ETH, and almost nobody bought them. A couple of people who were very fortunate at the time, one including one of the artists who was involved in the project, and a handful of other people who believed in it, bought a bunch of cards back then. They became the modern day whales for Curio Cards. And then earlier this year, and it was rediscovered. As part of the kind of it was rediscovered just a little bit after Mooncats were rediscovered. Somebody found the smart contracts. You could buy the cards. It was about $5 in ETH to mint the cards on that day, and magically, people got hundreds or thousands of them. Some did, and they've kind of grown from them. And obviously, this past 2 weeks, when Gary V and Daryl, who's president of the 76ers, started talking about, hey, their investment in Curio Cards, they went absolutely crazy. I mean, they went from 1 ETH to the most rare cards to 20 ETH for the most rare cards. So it's been a fun ride for those people who have, like myself, who have been in the Discord and been talking about Curio Cards for the last 5 months, to finally see a rise in price from our perspective, what we believe is a historically significant project as part of the NFTs like journey, to see it finally getting some credit.
Yeah, exactly. And, these old projects to me are a no-brainer in terms of like what should have value and be desirable, especially since with this project a lot of the cards are like plays on modern mainstream brands but with cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin or ETH or something else. And I
Absolutely.
really really like that, and they just look and feel old. They feel like NFTs that you're buying at a garage sale. And I know you said that, the rarest card before was maybe 1 ETH and now it's like, valued at maybe 20 ETH. But there's still some of these cards that you can buy for like not a lot of ETH compared to
Very little.
other projects.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that? That it hasn't been electric, even though they got the pumps from some key people.
Sure. It's interesting because some of the least expensive cards, I look at as like, oh, these are actually the most interesting. If you looked at the crypto graffiti cards, graffiti is like a famous artist in the space, and his cards are like the least expensive cards. It's interesting, and he developed these cards, back in 2016, 2017. He made them as stickers, and because they relate to banking and Bitcoin and how Bitcoin's going to overrun the banking. So he did like a Citibank one that looks like the Citibank logo, but it's a Bitcoin logo, right?
Yep.
And he would stick these on banks around San Francisco. So there's this kind of cool, rich history of it, where a really substantial artist was involved in this project, and but those cards, you can pick them up. Shoot, 2 weeks ago you could get them for $40. You know, now they might be $150 or whatever, maybe $200. Um, you know, and it's still I don't know. For me, I don't give advice on whether these are going to go up or down or whatever. I, I mean, I believe in them from a historical perspective, and I believe that, hey, look, when people look back on this time, 20 years from now, and NFTs are ingrained in every person on Earth's life, and they look at the history of NFTs, and they look at these interesting little projects that were the stepping stones to NFTs being a massive part of our world. I think they're going to hold a tremendous amount of value. That's just me. I could be completely wrong, right? But I love the project, and I love the people involved in the project. It's just a bunch of really good guys who were trying to do something special, failed miserably, right? And then were somehow risen from the dead to be relevant and be a part of NFT culture, and it's amazing. It's truly amazing. Yeah, those are the crypto graffitis. Um, they're great. I think they're great. But the community really, if you look at the dog ones, those kind of artistically wise, those seem to be the ones that are the most favored um, by the community. Maybe it's just because we all love dogs and we love the dog meme kind of thing. I mean, this is like the classic, dog sitting around a poker table one.
Yep.
Um, these are done. Hello Luis is I can tag it after, but at Hello Luis on Twitter. He's a relatively famous artist in Indonesia and has done a lot of beautiful works. And you'll if you find him and look at his OpenSea account, he's actually gone from dogs. He used to do almost exclusively dog art to now cats. So he's very much in the cat art industry now. But he's super cool, and his pieces are loved. I mean, you look at the Bitcoin. Yeah, that's not him. But if you look on Twitter, and actually, I'll put it in the chat here. I'll find it for you. So, but yeah, there you go. That's him. So he did that as a go back in that one there. Yeah. So if you look for his ETH wallet, he did these. That is a piece that he did that was actually rejected when they were proposing the art for the project. So he's now beginning, and all these artists are kind of beginning selling various versions of their art as that was part of the project, in creating the art, but didn't actually get taken as the art. And so yeah, this is one of his pieces that he made and submitted to Curio when they were doing it in 2017. They got rejected. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah, there's lots of interesting pieces to the whole project, but basically 30 cards. The most rare right now are those ones you saw that are like the pirate kind of themed ones. Those are by a guy called Robeck. You'll find him on Twitter, Robeck_world. Really cool artists, very prolific artist actually in the space. And those cards tend to be the most expensive simply because they were low supply, under 500. It's like 500, 200, and but they were purchased basically by one collector back in 2017 owns the majority of those cards. So you see card 22, 23 right there.
Yep.
Very low supply, controlled by just a few individuals. So those prices have skyrocketed. 23, the Barbarian, that, as far as my understanding goes, and as far as we can find, that's the first animated GIF on the Ethereum blockchain. So historically significant piece right there. You know, Robeck complains continuously that they only allowed him 2 frames. As an artist, he was constrained to 2 frames, and that's what you get. But very cool. We joke in the Discord that Robeck invented GIFs, and there you go. So he's a great guy, and it's a cool piece. And there are very few holders of those pieces. So all the Robeck pieces, there are 3 of them. Very few hands hold those pieces, so they're very, very valuable. And just yesterday, and I tweeted about it just yesterday, the president of the 76ers pulled off a trade to get his hands on a couple more of those to complete his set. And so kind of the value right now is in a complete set of Curio cards. And so he made a trade with a guy on our Discord server to trade basically a couple of those cards. I think it was 22 and 23. I'm not sure, for a selection of CryptoPunks, a little bit of ETH, and what he called a MeBit to be named later, which is very like NBA thing. I don't know if you follow the
Yeah,
NBA, but this is
NBA
very
language,
common.
like
Like
to be named later.
to
Yeah,
be
yeah, it's
named
pretty
later.
funny.
So a MeBit to be named later was involved in that trade, simply because he didn't want to shell out 50 ETH for those 2 cards, and he worked out a deal, and they got it done. And so he is a complete set holder right now. So that's pretty cool. And
How
Gary,
many are in a
no,
complete
Gary's a
set?
complete holder, but he's close. Gary's close.
How many are in a complete set?
So there's a little debate in the community here. So, but basically there are 30 cards. So the 30 cards are a complete set. The thing is, card 17, there is an alternative version called 17B. And so if you look up on OpenSea, type in Curio Cards 17B, you have to search for it. It's not going to be under the official Curio card. So the official
Okay. And
Curio
here's
card
17 right here.
only going to have 1 through 30. The 17B, this is an interesting part of the history. It was basically a fat finger thing when all of these contracts had to be hand loaded and hand delivered onto the Ethereum blockchain. 17 was done twice. And so what you had was a contract done that they then, didn't promote or anything because it was done by mistake. And this is it. So card 17B is the exact copy of 17. It was just done twice. And so it's not an official part of the full set, but I think it's basically been decided if you are a full set holder, you have to have 17B.
And so, I mean, this one is available right now for 0.33 ETH, which
Mhm.
just like it's not that much. I mean, I know $650 is $650, right? But like,
Mhm.
it's not that much compared to what people pay.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, to me, I feel like this is worth much more than that. Given that it's a piece of history, I feel like not very many people know what you just talked about, like all of these details. Like you're deeply involved with Curio Cards, like compared to the average NFT person. So I
Sure.
feel like if this gets discovered, doesn't this seem to be something that people would want to swoop in and own? Like how many 17Bs are there? There's 65 owners of this? It looks like.
Well, so 17s have like I believe it's like 2,000 for each card. So 2,000 is the max on any card. And just to
Okay.
give you the very, very brief overview of that, when they released these, they tried to do incentives to get people to purchase. So for actually each contract, they released 3 full contracts because what it was different pricing tiers depending on how quickly you purchase the cards. The thing is, when it was up to 100,000 cards, all of these were, or not all of these, but the early versions were supposed to have up to 100,000 cards. They really wanted to spread these out. The thing was, nobody purchased them back in 2017. So these contracts were still sitting there. And what they had was a built in burn mechanism, which is probably the first on the Ethereum blockchain, which, if it went over a certain time limit, the rest of the cards were going to get burned after 2000. So when I tried to ape into Curio Cards back in March, and I went in and looked, I'm looking at a full supply of 100,000 cards. I actually didn't purchase the stupid cards because I'm like 100,000. How are the even at $5? You're telling me this is going to be worth a half a million? This makes no. It didn't make any sense to me. But I didn't understand, and most people didn't understand at the time, that there was a burn mechanism. So once the 2000 card threshold was released, all the rest are gone. So yeah, the max supply on 17, I believe, is 2000. And we can talk about other supplies. 27, you just pulled up the blue one. This is I'm calling this the Gary V card. Gary has like 100 of these. There's only 600, and so he owns a sixth of the entire um, collection of 27. So interesting card, still relatively inexpensive. If you go to 26, 26 has an interesting story that brings in Roback, who I spoke about before, one of the artists on the project who did those kind of pirate ones. 26 is basically the lowest number of mints. So this one actually has a total supply of only 111. But during the rediscovery, there was a wrapper that was built very, very rapidly to put these things on OpenSea. That wrapper turned out to be a dead wrapper. You put something in, you could never get it back out again. So it's a dead wrapper. Curio holders lost probably a couple of thousand cards in total to that wrapper. 5 of the 26 cards were lost to that wrapper. So we know as of now, unless somebody's able to fix that wrapper, this 26 card has a total supply of 106. So the maximum supply of total sets of Curio cards is actually 106. That's the max. And if you do a little bit of investigative research, you realize there's probably about 50 26s that are in wallets from 2017 that haven't been touched. So it's very, very possible that the actual number of total complete sets is probably more like 50 if everything works out. And it all kind of funnels through 26. 26 is the bottleneck. And it's the bottleneck to a complete set, right? Um, so it's an interesting thing, and you see it went up from 1.5 ETH to I think the last one traded about 10 ETH for 26. It's an interesting card, and we'll see where it goes. But it's definitely the lowest number mint.
And so is this card the hardest one to get by far?
No, it's not actually because let me pull in Robeck. So Robeck, when he was part of this project, he was the artist for cards 21 to 23. He was like, let me just buy up all the supply of 26 when it launched. So back in 2017, he bought, if not all, very close to all of 26s. So when this was rediscovered, there was basically one wallet which held all the 26s, which is Robeck. But he's a great guy. And what he did was he basically gifted and gave these things out to people. So he has distributed the supply of 26s amongst a lot of holders. And so what you have is quite a bit of liquidity in 26. So there are people bidding and offering for 26s. So 26s are actually relatively easy to purchase when you compare it to Roback's own cards, which are the 21 to 23, because those are actually in fewer hands than 26. If that makes sense.
Okay, I mean,
I hope
yeah, yeah.
well, it's a little bit complicated. Yeah.
No, dude, you explain it perfectly fine. But I'm on OpenSea right now. I can't figure out how to like see where I can buy this. So it looks like you only have to make an offer on it, right? There aren't any actively listed for sale.
No, you're in the wrong. So you're in wrapped Curio Cards. So go search
Okay.
just Curio Cards, hit the blue check. So anybody who's wanting to buy Curio Cards, definitely hit the blue check because you don't want to get a wrapped card because then there's fees to unwrap and all this sort of stuff. So definitely look for the blue check mark. This is where you can get it. You can go to 26 right there. So right now somebody's offering it for 11 ETH, right? So that's kind of the pricing right now. And that with the way it turns, man, the NFT market is crazy. It was on fire 3 days ago, right? I mean, it was on fire. And now it's like, oh, we're in a bear market. It's nonsense. It's complete not well, it's so thinly traded, right? It's so thinly traded, these markets, that I mean, look, it's ripe for manipulation. It's ripe for a handful of people to control the market. And the smart money, like Gary V, is like, oh, let me just buy up all the 27s, and that's what he's basically done. And so that's smart. I tell people, look, 27s are still relatively inexpensive. You think Gary V is just going to flip it for a loss? Nah. I wouldn't be surprised if Gary holds that card for 10 years, and so there's still opportunities. I don't know what they are. People have to figure that out for themselves. I just like the cards because I like the people who are involved with it. I like we talk about community, but it's awesome people. Like I've literally done podcasts with, I don't know, 5 of the team members. They're great guys. And they were innovative, and failed, but were resurrected. And that's a great story. And I think the art world loves great stories.
For sure. And which card do you think is the most well-known card?
It's got to be Apple, right? The number one card. It's got to be the most kind of well-known card. So number one, that it is literally the first art NFT on Ethereum is a big deal. And we did have a little bit of controversy the last week because as people started getting into
Not this
this,
one, right? Not
no,
this
that's
one.
not it. No. Yeah, so you see all the scams on OpenSea, man. You really have to be careful. You really have to be careful. People just trying to get you to ape into something. So just look up Curio Cards. Just look up actually just look for the blue check mark and then just search there for the first card. You'll see it very clearly. It's got an apple as the it's very clear. And so we had some interesting controversy because the first 3 contracts, 1, 2, and 3, were released on the same day. It was a They released them all at the same time, quote unquote. There it is. And so, but there was some question as to whether or not that contract was actually released first. Because as I said, there were multiple contracts for each card because they were doing this pricing tiered structure. And, the way it was, all hand done and stuff, very possible that Rhett, who was in charge of this, accidentally did the seconds first because they didn't really care back then about mint time and what was minted first. But the guys in the Discord did some research, and it was Apple was released about 5 minutes before the second card, which was released a minute or two before the third card. But then it was raised, well, actually, which card was purchased first? It's an interesting question, right? And Travis, who is one of the co-founders of the project, did his research and found, oh my gosh, actually card number 2 was bought first. And I said, wow, I actually created a tweet about it. It kind of went semi-viral, at least for me. And I swear to God, like 50 people bought card number 2 within like an hour. People were aping into that card. Then another person in our Discord started looking into it deeper, actually looking through all of the contracts, and turns out no, Apple was the first one purchased. So the
Back and
purchase,
forth.
it's like you get into these details, and the smart contracts don't lie. But it did go Apple, then card number 3, which is Barry's, and then card number 2. That was the actual purchase order. Not that it matters, but just an interesting fact. And people, it can move markets, these interesting facts. Yeah, lucky one saying Gary's got some apples too. Yeah, I'm sure Gary's going for the complete set. I'm sure of that, but I think Gary's smart and he's going to wait for maybe a pullback before he really goes for it.
Yeah, I mean, I always wonder, like, these people that have, so much money, like a Gary V and stuff. I'm always interested why Gary wouldn't just come in and just buy the whole set now and then maybe wait for a pullback to kind of increase his exposure. But then again, at the end of the day, like, you never know, and he might have some insider info. I really like a lot of the different designs, and just like my favorite ones are definitely the crypto ones that were stickers originally, the crypto graffiti ones for sure. I think I just love the idea that this whole project is really built on those stories and those facts and history that you've been talking about, and it inside and out. So I guess at this point we've covered these art ones by what's the name? Robeck?
Yeah, Robeck _world on Twitter.
Okay, so we covered those. 24, 25, and 26 have their own little story, right? Because of 26 being what it was. With these three, 27, 28, and 29, what is the deal? Like, what are these exactly? Like, what is yeah.
The story behind these is a guy named Max, and he's a professional artist. And so he did these under a pseudonym. So he was anonymous when he did these. These are actually Marisol Vengus was the name of these cards. And when I first learned of Curio, and I started reaching out, I learned about it, and that same day I started reaching out to the people who I could find that were associated with the project. And I searched, for the name on these cards, and it was Marisol Vengus. And I said, "Oh, Marisol Vengus." I punch it into Google, and I find a Facebook account with Marisol Vengus. And I go into Facebook, and I DM Marisol, and I'm like, "Hey, Marisol, my name's Adam, and I just found Curio Cards and blah blah blah." Marisol, actually, of all the team members and all the artists, Marisol was the first person to write me back. And I conversed with Marisol. Marisol told me the story, all this sort of stuff. Turns out Marisol is actually Max. And Max, he used it as a pseudonym because a lot of his artwork, he wants his artwork. And then he does these kind of projects, which I guess is common in the art world, where he's just doing kind of random stuff. And he doesn't want it tied to his particular name because it's very different than what he normally does. So these prints were actually done. These are physical prints that they then scanned and put in. And so they're really cool. He still has the original physical prints. And if you come on our Discord, you can chat with Max and follow him on Twitter. He's a great guy. Know him personally. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. They're awesome pieces. They really are. And this is kind of the cool stuff about the Curio selection. It's like, yeah, there are digital first artists. There are physical artists like Max, and like the 26 card that we just talked about. Those are hand drawn by a guy named Daniel. He's an artist who does everything manually, right? It's all pen and paper. and he's just scanned them in. Um, so yeah, that's basically how these were done. And 29, just to give you everybody listening an idea, these are also really, really slightly or thinly held, I guess you would call it. Very few holders. So I think 29 may actually be currently the highest ask. I don't know if it's 50 ETH or whatever for the current ask on 29, but also very, very thinly traded. Very few holders of 29. So I mean, it's kind of one of these things. The lowest supply is 26, but there are a whole bunch of cards that are going to be barriers for full sets. Okay, it's come back. So somebody wants to get out or sees the market pulling back, and so maybe there's an opportunity for somebody who wants to complete the set to get into a 29 right now. But it's one of these things, when they're thinly traded and few holders, it's hard to judge true pricing because they're so thinly traded and so few holders, right? When a couple of people control the market, they control the price.
It's wild, man. It really, really is. And there's just such a rich history, and I appreciate you coming on because you really seem to know it in and out. Is there anything about this one that kind of is noteworthy history wise?
No, I would say not necessarily this one. If you go to card 8, I think it's card 8, the Mona Lisa. And you look at Mona Lisa, yeah, card 8 there. Card 8 amongst the community, this is considered the most clean of all the Curio cards. The big following for this card. And I don't
It
know
is
if
clean. It's nice.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't get art really. I mean, I'm certainly not an art critique in any way. But people are like, this one connects with people because they feel like it's, as I said, the most clean. And that it's Mona Lisa, kind of Mona Lisa's first appearance on the blockchain, maybe has some other aspects to it as well. But yeah, people love this card. A lot of big, and this is kind of what we always learn with these NFT projects and certainly the avatar projects. There are these, it's rarity. Rarity has a meaning. Rarity is important, right? But it's not the only deciding factor. And that kind of other thing is if it connects with you emotionally. And 8 connects with people emotionally. Those dog ones connect with people emotionally. So there are other factors other than simply rarity, which drive pricing and drive interest, right? That's across projects, but certainly in Curio, you get a lot of that.
What's the deal with this one?
This is so Mad Bitcoins, if you don't know who he is, Mad Bitcoins on Twitter. He's an OG Bitcoiner, like OG. Like he's had a YouTube channel podcast for, you know, almost 10 years. Like he's really old school. And so if you see Mad Bitcoins, that's his face, and he's kind of famous for that hat. Um, and so this is overlaid over I don't know, James Bond's body, right? And done by artist Philippe. And I think it's like the coolest. I told him, bro, like this is the greatest selfie picture of all time for you. Like, I wish I had this sort of thing, man, to look this cool. So yeah, not I would say not one of the more highly prized of the pieces, but for him and Bitcoiners, this is kind of an interesting part of history because Mad Bitcoin is pretty well known in the Bitcoin space.
For sure. And so any other ones that you think are worth kind of diving deep into? I mean, you know the stuff inside now, man. I'm really enjoying learning about it from you. Any of these other ones that you think has a notable story?
Well, the 30, which is a much more full animated GIF right there.
Yeah.
We don't know the artists. The actual founders will not share who this actually is. So guesses abound. People who are artists tell me it's actually super well done. I couldn't tell you whether it looks honestly, it looks childish. But they're actually like, no, no, no. This is high end animation. I'm like, okay, whatever. What do I know? So it was done by a guy named Thornos of Mar, or something like that. I don't, it's like it was basically another one of these anonymous submissions to the project. Travis, the co-founder, knows who it is. but I don't know if anybody else truly knows who it is. But supposedly a relatively famous artist did this one. And what it symbolizes, I guess, when in 2016, 27, there was a famous eclipse that happened in San Francisco. And so this is an eclipse using the Curio mascot. That's kind of a symbol of that actual event. And so a lot of people, this one is one of the cards that's actually risen quite a lot in price as people fall in love with that story. People were a part of this eclipse, remember this eclipse. And, as number 30, the final piece in the Curios card collection, that it has the mascot of Curio Cards. It's kind of like a nice ending to the set. And so, yeah, it's pretty highly valued for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's highly valued, but at the same time, you can buy it for 1 ETH right now. So it does surprise me that the market hasn't responded to Curio Cards in the way that you would expect. I think some of them they've definitely responded. The market's responded on, like the 18 ETH floor ones and those ones that you talked about by Robeck. But some of these other ones, like you can just snipe these for a relatively recent price. Do you think that that has to do with the big supply, because there's like a solid amount of cards for each mint, with the exception of 26 or whichever one that was?
I think there are two factors. One is that, right, that it's a card of many cards, right? All of them
Yep.
are a card of many. And the other thing is, I think they don't have, and I tweeted about this, I don't think they have the avatar potential that we're
Sure.
expecting right now in the NFT space. People want to be able to use avatars. They want their purchases to be avatars. And so I think, older projects have this disadvantage. Curio's one of them. You talk about Mooncats. Mooncats, I mean, some people use them as their avatars, but they're not differentiated. They're not different enough individually to really truly stand out unless you had a Genesis Mooncat. Etheria, which is the first project on the Ethereum network. How do you put a tile as your avatar? Like, it just doesn't
Right.
work. And so I think they're at a distinct disadvantage when it comes to that. So, it is what it is. And they are a different kind of project. And so you either kind of buy into this historical narrative and get excited about that, or you don't. And obviously a lot of people don't, which is fine. It's art, right? It's up into the eye of the beholder. And I think that's part of the cool thing about it. It's different. It is not your standard NFT project. It's something different. And, I think it's cool in its place in history as it is. People have talked, oh, should we do a, Curio 2 or whatever? It's not going to happen. At least from the devs and the team itself, it's not going to happen. So this really is something that lives in a space in time, which was pre-CryptoPunk. This was, this is an innovator, man. I mean, big time. And, I think it's going to be recognized that for eventually, like how this really was a stepping stone. This was a stepping stone to CryptoPunks, to CryptoKitties, and to all the rest of the things that are now part of our everyday life. This is an important step.
I agree, man. And you know so much about it. I just appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us. We're at 40 minutes, so I think we should call it here for this one. But I'd love to have you back on and talk more about other projects, whether from this time period or right now, because obviously, you follow the space closely and you're very knowledgeable. And I think the audience too really enjoyed listening to you,
Love you, brother. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter. He's got a podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcast, The Adam McBride Show. And yeah, we'll look to have him on again soon.